On the 24th of April, Sandfall Interactive released their inaugural project, a labour of love from a studio of around 30 people at its core, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. One of my most anticipated games of 2025, and indeed for many other JRPG fans too. When it was first revealed in June last year, it quickly became the highlight for people like me, a brand new AAA turn-based game with elements synonymous with the genre. Release date couldn't come soon enough, and unfortunately for me I was able to play it a few days before release as a perk of the channel. All I can say after 100%ing the game is that it was completely worth the wait, and all the hype attached to it was substantiated. That's what is crazy, hype can so often kill a game when it releases, rarely does a game meet the expectation attached to it. But Clair Obscur was one of the rare exceptions. It not only met my expectations, it exceeded them in pretty much every area. It's worth noting that I play a lot of JRPGs, but I rarely 100% them. I think a lot of the tasks tied to 100% completion are just frustrating, and when a game stops being fun, what's the point in playing anymore? I'll do all the side content that I want, finish the main story, and maybe do some post-game stuff if it's substantial, but once I feel I've had enough, I move on. For me to 100% any game like this, it has to be special, which should speak volumes for what I think about Clair Obscur. As far as I'm concerned, it is a masterpiece. Pretty much everything about it is stellar, and if you're worried that the game might not be for you, have a listen and maybe it'll give you the answers you need. Clair Obscur begins in the fictional land of Lumiere, an island somewhat reminiscent of Paris with familiar locales that have seemingly been warped or destroyed following an event called the Fracturing. On this island lives Gustave and his sister Maëlle, who are making their way to a festival, but this festival is by no means a happy occasion. The people of Lumiere are effectively tied to a short deadline. Their lives are cut short due to the enigmatic paintress who can be seen in the distance. Some of those who are nearing their end choose to go on expeditions in an effort to stop the paintress from continuing this cycle. In this instance, Gustave and Maëlle embark on the latest of these efforts, Expedition 33, and sail to the main continent filled with wondrous lands and dangerous creatures.
Thanks to you, Expedition 33.
Now we'll start with the story because it is a part of these games that I am very much drawn to and in some cases can make or break an experience for me. Clair Obscur, in my eyes, has an absolutely brilliant story with one of the best openings I've ever seen. It starts off strong and it ends strong as well. It's got amazing cinematography, the atmosphere is on point, the actual developments of the story are well realised and it's paced so well. What I appreciate the most about Clair Obscur is that it does something that I think JRPGs as a whole could learn from. It has no padding. There are no sequences in the game that are there purely to artificially bloat playtime. An example of that would be the Cait Sith section in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I love the lack of padding in Clair Obscur. It shows respect to the player's time and makes sure that every hour counts. That approach only aids in its overall quality. I can say the same about the characters too, really well realised and with great dialogue too. Yes, at its core, this is a serious group of characters, but what I also appreciate is that they show the other side as well. There's humour, chemistry and relatable depth to each of them, along with unique side stories that are completely optional but in the same breath, completely worth it. I personally was a massive fan of Esquier, the lovable blob of emotional support. Every scene he's in is just golden.
Prove it.
We'll trade you, Uri, for this, lovely portrait of you.
Is that supposed to be me?
I think we captured your essence beautifully.
No deal. You want Uri? Come and get it!
But that's not all. No doubt what aids the narrative further is the music. The soundtrack for this game. Music like the kind offered by Clair Obscur is why I consistently mention soundtrack quality in games. It's why I think this element is so important for an overall experience. The music is just on another level. It adds so much to every scene. Every emotional moment is matched perfectly by the song that plays alongside it. And that's not just in scenes, even just exploring the world is given that added dimension of depth when adding in the music that accompanies it. Now in terms of that exploration, I personally love it. There is an overworld map in Clair Obscur, but more intrinsic exploration is tied to entering the zones themselves. There's a good deal of verticality in many of them, branching paths without being overbearing, and a lot of treasure to find. There was a small issue where I would sometimes get caught on pebbles as I ran around, but nothing egregious, it has to be said. And that's not even considering the look of them. My word. The vistas on display for Clair Obscur are gorgeous, some of the finest backdrops and environments I've seen in a game. I hope the art team got a pay raise and a big fat bonus because they deserve it. Not often are you going to see a game that looks as good as this. But below the surface, Clair Obscur has plenty to offer in its world too. The main story takes about 25 to 30 hours depending on how you play, but you're looking at around 60 to play through it all. There's a decent amount of optional content to be discovered here, and it's meaningful optional content too, the kind I was happy to seek out. You've got mini-games, a host of side quests, some of which are tied to the characters, and even a bunch of optional bosses, well hidden too, it has to be said. And if you're looking for challenge, you seek out the optional bosses. Some of them are absolutely brutal in terms of mechanics, fights that you simply cannot win unless you know their moveset inside and out. That mantra of studying the bosses and knowing how to react is the core of the combat in Clair Obscur itself, and I was totally on board with it. Clair Obscur uses a turn-based approach with a max of 3 party members with turn order shown on the left-hand side. Each character plays completely different from the last with unique mechanics tied to each of them, and each has a ranged attack to focus on weak points that some enemies may have, represented by a glowing spot. The options synergize well, you can get some really cool combinations going, and it only aids in overall combat design. Each character has a skill tree for additional moves of which they can equip 6 at a time, and you can also equip them with luminers up to a point limit. Luminers are basically another form of equipment. They're going to be the way that you can exceed the damage cap, they give you added ability points, or help in the defensive phase. To get the best ones though, you'll often need to find them, which gives even more reason to explore the world. Now as for combat itself, it is all about timing, which I'm generally pretty bad at, but it was effectively sink or swim with Clair Obscur. I had to learn how to dodge and parry if I wanted to succeed in this game. There are timed inputs for attacks for added effectiveness, but it's arguably more important on the defensive phase when the enemy goes after you. Enemies would give visual cues based on their movements, and that is added to further via a prompt shown on screen. These in combination allowed me to know what attack was coming, and then it just came down to execution. And in that regard, it was giving me Souls-like vibes. In fact, there were quite a few things in Clair Obscur that I felt were similar to those games, and it's one reason why I was so engaged with it. I am a fan of Souls games as well. I've played all of the games that From Software have put out since Demon's Souls, and I love them all. And from that, I see Clair Obscur as a hybrid between your typical JRPG style and a Souls-like style at the same time. On the JRPG side, there's the party management aspect, the large world map, buffs and debuffs, deep customization, traditional leveling and the focused linear story, and then on the Souls side you have the overall structure of the zones, the lack of minimap in said zones, which was a conscious design decision from Sandford themselves, the expedition logs to add to the lore, the weapon scaling, the expedition flags basically being bonfires, and its overall difficulty at times, it has to be said. I've said already that those optional bosses are a challenge. Some of the patterns are hard to nail down, they can be brutal in some cases. I almost gave up on the final achievement because the fight was, in my eyes, harder than anything else the game had to offer. But I kept going. I kept at it because the combat rewarded me for learning, and it was satisfying. What I like about this combat is that I could effectively beat anything in the game as long as I mastered the parry and dodge mechanics. There was no level gating, no impossible fights to be had, or at least it didn't feel that way to me. Once I nailed down the enemy's move pool, it all came down to the execution. My success in fights depended upon my skill and timing, and that is never a bad thing. That's not to say though that character builds had no importance. The way I built my party members would dictate how hard the fight may be. For example, building the team for high damage output at the expense of defense because the boss would heal if I made a mistake with a parry, so there's still plenty of import put on the idea of building the party correctly to circumvent that difficulty. So I feel there's balance put on the player's active skill and also their ability to build the characters effectively. Once again, it's that hybrid approach that I was a big fan of. I will admit that some of the attack patterns take a little too long for my tastes, like this one here.
Okay.
But in the majority, for me, the combat is very good. I'd say the only notable issue I had with the combat is that there was no way to change characters during a fight, or at least I didn't see one. The 3 in your active party are the ones you have to use, and you can only switch over when they're all taken out. It sometimes meant I was fighting an enemy with, say, fire affinity, and I was using fire-based weapons, so my attack options were limited. It was probably my biggest issue of the game, but that says a lot about the overall quality of Clair Obscur, if a lack of team rotation is my most notable problem with it. But I do also want to give a mention to the spectacle of the fights too, because they aided in the satisfaction. Some of the boss fights in terms of visuals are striking, much like the world itself. They're epic, grandiose, the sound design is perfect, multiple unique phases are there. In short, some of them are going to stick in my mind for years. And that sentiment will carry over to the entire game itself. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 will remain in my mind for years. In my opinion, it has raised the bar in many respects when considered as a complete package. Production values, gameplay, story, music, visuals. Clair Obscur excels in basically every area. For me, it's a masterpiece of a game and one of the finest experiences I have ever had. Sandfall Interactive, pat yourselves on the back, you have created something absolutely stunning. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe for more JRPG content and consider joining my Patreon if you're interested. Peace.